Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of the LA journey. The first video that I shared last week was all about my story of moving to LA and what it took to get here. And this week I am sharing tips on if you're planning to make the move to LA or any big city in general. So let's get started. So anytime you're making a big move, you want to put a lot of thought into this. I personally am a very spontaneous person, and so even when I was making this move, I was planning a long time into this and trying to figure out like what was next, all the details that went into what was to come, that kind of stuff. It's really important to set yourself up well for that, or as good as you can, depending on like how long you have to plan for that. Also, being able to know what you need most. For me, I'm a very community-oriented person, and so I knew that I needed to get connected right away, especially because I was moving to a city where I hardly knew anyone. And so being able to find places where I could meet people. My roommate actually got me connected to a church out here that I fell in love with right away, and I was able to get connected in a group, and they actually helped me move out here. And so just figuring out like how you can get connected even before you move is also really helpful. And giving yourself a date or a deadline to move by is really great, because then you can start planning a little bit more of how many expenses that you have before you move, after you move, how much that you need to save up, all of the details that go into that, being flexible with that if you can. But having some kind of idea in mind really helps with being more intentional with the time that you have where you're at, and then also prepping well. When you're planning all these things, being able to map out expenses and all the stuff that you have even before you make the move. So if you have weddings that you're going to be in or going to, or trips that you have, being able to really plan through those things so that you're able to know how much money that you're spending before you make the move. That way you can also know how much that you're actually going to have when you make the move. It's really important to give yourself a cushion when you move, especially when you're moving without a job like I did. Having a stockpile saved up, knowing how much rent that you're about going to have to pay, or different bills, car insurance. I was super naive when I moved here. I was thinking that LA wasn't going to be like super expensive. I was wondering why people were always saying that it was, and then you just realize all of these added costs that come with it. Car registration is through the roof. Car insurance goes up a ton. Parking is another expense that you literally have to account for everything. Food gets more pricey, coffee, all of the things get more pricey. So just knowing where you're moving to and how expensive it's going to be when you're actually there. And another thing when you're doing this, saving up a stockpile for a while is really important, so that you can give yourself a cushion that you're actually staying out there more long term, so that you're not like having to move back after a couple of months. And granted, things happen and it doesn't always work out that way, but if you're able to save up beforehand, it's really helpful. If you have a lot of time before you move, being picky about where you move and all of the different factors, it's okay. Don't feel like you have to settle. For me, I wanted the season to be fun and adventurous, and being able to enjoy this next year as much as I could, or time after that, was something that I really valued when I was planning for something like this. And so I didn't settle for like the first house that came up, or I wasn't offered any jobs. But if you're offered a job that you're not like super happy about, you could maybe hold off a little bit until you find something that you do like. So it kind of depends on like how much time that you have and what you're willing to kind of like sacrifice on that. And then leading into my next point, even if you're trying not to settle on that, be open and be flexible. different opportunities, different deadlines. There's a lot of things that will come up, and the more that you're open with that kind of stuff is really good, because there might be a lot of opportunities that will open up that you might not have saw yourself in before. So just be open. It's really great. And then once you decide on the area that you're kind of wanting to move to, visit it, get to know the community that's there, see if this is an area that you actually want to live in, kind of get to know it a little bit. It's really nice. I actually moved into an area that I never been to before, and so I came out to check it out a little bit, check out the place and meet my roommates, that kind of stuff, to kind of get an idea of like, is this a place where I want to live? And then being intentional with your community, so big before you move out there, move anywhere, being able to soak up the time that you have left. It's such a treasured time, being able to spend time with your friends, your family, and it's not that those things go away, but it just shifts differently. It shifts a lot. And so just being able to soak up that time that you have is really sweet before you make the move, and it looks a little bit different. And then a couple of tips when you're actually here, you've made the move, you're gonna spend a lot of time at the DMV, so brace yourself. You could even find a place that is registered by the DMV that saves on so much time, and honestly, I highly recommend that, just above the DMV all the way. I spent so many days in the DMV and it was so unnecessary. And also, when you come, Arizona, their licenses, you can have it for like 50 years. You don't have to renew it. And California, you have to renew it every 2 years. And you actually have to retake your driver's license test when you get here. It's just the like multiple choice one, but I was not expecting it. It's easy, it's fine, but it's just one of those things where you're like, I gotta retake this. So that is one of those things. And then being able to register your address anytime that you move, and car insurance, you'll have to shift it depending on the area that you'll move to. It could look very different. Mine was so different than what I expected. It pretty much doubled, more than doubled than what I was originally paying. So just fair warning, if depending on your area, it could look so different than what you're used to. And then my biggest thing, honestly, when you're in the new place, you're getting settled in, being able to connect to different communities when you get here, so big. I know personally I'm an extroverted person. I love getting to know people and I love exerting that energy. And I know that if you're more introverted, that energy is harder to find. And even if it is, I would just encourage you to find communities that you want to spend time with that might have similar interests, just so you can really kind of get to know some people right off the bat, and then you can build your community from there. And for example, I went to a lot of different creative events to get to know people, and there's a lot of freelancers and people who work from home, so I threw a lot of work days together, and it was really great because if you're working on a lot of individual projects and you all just meet up at a coffee shop, it makes it not feel so solo. And so that's a fun way to get to know some people. And then being able to find people in jobs or hobbies. I actually throw together monthly potlucks to connect more people in LA. It's a lot of fun and it's something that I enjoy. Another thing too is being able to have a lot of grace when you settle in and when you just made like a big shift in your life. For me, I was really hard on myself and I constantly felt like I was missing the mark or I didn't feel like myself, and it took me a while to kind of adjust and get settled in, and that's totally normal. And especially with LA, there's so many people that come in from out of state to live here. And so being able to hear people's experiences and their transition and just being able to have grace in that season it's okay. And because you're making a lot of different moves in your life. So, and if there's community back at home, friends, family, being intentional with keeping those relationships if you want to is really good. And finding ways that it works for those, it does make a shift. And so having movie nights or dinner parties or any kind of like adventures on the fly, it does change and it is really hard to adjust to that. But knowing that if you value those friendships, relationships, and vice versa, that you can totally make it work. And even though it looks a little bit differently, it doesn't mean that you necessarily lose those by any means. It just looks a little bit different. And for example, I'll call and I'll visit a lot, and then vice versa, and they'll call, visit, that kind of stuff. And so it's really just figuring out what that looks like for you guys. And I know I put a heavy emphasis on community, but I do think it is really important, especially when you're uprooting your life, and being able to find a community that you can connect with or maintain is really important, especially when you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're gonna tackle a lot of hard things when you make a move, and so having that form of stability is really nice. And I hope these tips were helpful. And if you've made a move, comment below some extra tips that you found helpful or a tip that I've mentioned that you really liked. And until next Friday, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with your friends. All right, guys, until then, peace.